Hello and welcome to today's series. Now, this is the second series, and today we are going to be looking at if you've ever been to a doctor, you can grasp data analytics. And you can see the analytics is the ultimate weapon you didn't know you already had. Now, let's move into the next slide where if you know something about wrestling, you will understand this. Now, let's welcome into the ring, weighing 250 pounds. We have data analytics. Yay! Ignore the fact that he's wearing he or she they're wearing boxing gloves. That's not important right now. Just go with the trend of the wrestling. And coming in to contend with data analytics, weighing 255 pounds, let's welcome business intelligence. Yay! Now we have round two. This is round two of the battle between both of them, and it's going to be an interesting battle. Now, the reason I decided to start with this particular slide is sort of what happens in wrestling. If you have looked at wrestling, you've looked at those that have had a very, very successful career in wrestling. Obviously, you will have outliers, but generally speaking, this is the trend you would observe. And this particular trend tends to move in this order. Now, it may not necessarily flow in this particular order in all cases, but like I said, generally speaking, it tends to move in this order for those that are very, very successful in wrestling. And the first phase is what I call the tag team phase. Now, the tag team phase is usually where both wrestlers, it is both of them against the world. So they are saying it is us against the world. This has to do with the early days, and that's because they are obviously both small. Maybe they are just getting into the industry. They don't really know anyone. Even those that are dead don't really know them, and because um, they just want to maybe they even have several people that they want to test, so they just put them as, maybe the management just puts them as tag team champions, or perhaps they see that one still needs to learn something from the other and this other person will be the best person. They put them together and they say, both of you go show us what you can do. That's phase one. And like I said, phase one, they realize they are both small, but they see that together they can do big things. Now that's phase one. Now, as phase one progresses, we then get to phase two. And in phase two is the rivalry phase. What generally tends to happen is that one particular part of the team begins to say, I'm more important. The fans love me. They're coming because of me. I'm the one that ends up winning all the matches, and all of that. And what they're basically saying at that particular point is, I can take the world. This is usually during their growth stage. And even when you look at children that grow, that's like children getting into the teenage phase where it's almost as though they're just going against almost anything that their parents are saying, or that authority is saying, because they are trying to sort of test the waters, and they're trying to look for their own strengths. They're trying to see what makes them unique, and they don't want to be dependent on the other party. So like I said, they are saying, I can take the world. This is during the growth stage or growth days. They are saying, I'm more important than you. I don't need you. The fans love me. Now, after they've grown through this phase, there is a stage, there's a lot that goes on in this phase, and they get into phase three. But just before they get into phase 3. At the tipping point of phase 2, people that tend to go alone end up finding something very, very interesting. um, they suddenly discover that obviously life is not just all about them. They realize that they do have strengths. They obviously realize they do have weaknesses as well. And they even find out something very, very interesting about fans, that fans are very, very liquid. they they just move like the wind. They are with you today and tomorrow, pumps. If you do the slightest thing that goes against their beliefs or their structure, or maybe a different structure that you didn't know they had, you find out that they could just easily dump that person and move on to someone else. So um once they begin to realize this, they start getting mature, and this phase 3 is what we call the friendship phase, or we'll call it partnership. But this is partnership from a position of strength. It's not like the very first one where it starts in, they didn't really know each other, they were both there trying to find their place. Whereas in this case, they already know their place, they know their weakness, and they look for those that would actually complement them. So at this particular point, it's no longer them against the world, it's more or less now them for the world. And like I said, this occurs during the mature days, and they obviously have realized that they are both strong. They know they both have fans, and they are both now collaborating together to help the world. Now, all of this is very, very important, because when we look at the battle between data analytics and business intelligence, I think we've gone through phase 1. Phase 1, whereby we had the tag team phase, where they obviously had to work together. Analytics had to work with business intelligence or business visualization, because those were the early days. That was how things had to be packaged, and I think that was actually why the name business intelligence came from, and why it came up. That was what they were able to use, the term that businesses were able to use to sell to the customers. And obviously, every customer, every business wants someone that's intelligent, or something that has to do with intelligence. So I think, from my point of view, definitely we've gone through phase 1, and I currently think we are in phase 2, which is the rivalry phase. And in this phase, this is where you can see data analytics trying to stand out, you can see business intelligence trying to stand out. They're both trying to get that sense of identity, and that's obviously because of the confusion that tends to occur in phase 1 as well. So this is where they are trying to find their place. Data analytics is trying to find its place. Business intelligence, as we know it today, which I would actually call um, data visualization, is also trying to find its proper place. So this rivalry is going to go on, and unless there is some form of coordination to help um, these two, you find out that sometimes rivalries can go on for a very, very long time. And why I'm creating these slides is to sort of help, to make things move faster to the mature phase, where it's very clear what data analytics is and what it stands for, and what data visualization, or what we currently know as business intelligence, what it also is and what it stands for as well. And that would take us to a nice phase 3 stage, whereby you find out that businesses are getting what they are doing, what they want, clients are getting what they want, you have satisfied job, those that are doing the jobs are satisfied as well. Everyone is just happy, happy, happy days. Now, let's look and let's focus on why analytics matters and why it matters today. If you looked at the previous series, I did mention an issue that has to do with communication problem, and that's because we live in an over communicated world. It's almost like a communication jungle out there. And when you look at the average mind is already a dripping sponge. Now, when a mind is full, it can only soak up more information at the expense of what's already there. And from a business point of view, today, every business is soaking up more and more data. Now, my concern is, where is this data being stored? You know, because are we also having a full scenario with businesses? And if you know anything about water, when water soaks up a ground and you don't channel it properly, or if you don't store it properly, you could have one of these two problems. You could unconsciously have a flood, or unknowingly have a flood, or you could be creating a swamp. And this is where analytics helps, and it helps to channel your data. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this, because this is something that's very, very important. Now, for us to prevent a flood or a swamp, one of the first words that comes to mind is data leak. And I think about it and I say that's interesting that they call it data leak. They don't call it data theft, or they don't use something else to describe it. And what people are generally saying is, they are saying that they think data has water-like properties. And if you know anything about water, water finds the path of least resistance. If you've ever dealt with any leak, before, maybe currently or in the past, you find out that one of the things you try to do is you try and look for the source of the leak, especially when the leak is manageable, when it's not something that is like a fountain with a lot of pressure. You're like, okay, what's the source of this leak? Let me try and fix it. But if the pressure is a lot at that particular point in time, you're not trying to deal with, oh, what is the source of this leak? Obviously, if you know the source of the leak, you will say, oh, deal with that. But where you do not know the source of the leak and the pressure is a lot, your first response is, can I control this leak first? After I've controlled it, and controlling it there means you are channeling it so that it goes to the direction that you want it to go, rather than going to a different direction. After you've done that, you then say, okay, now let me try and find out the source of this particular issue, and let me control the source, seal the source, so that we prevent future scenarios. Now, what I just described shows the importance of having a system. Everyone that has dealt with a leak goes through this particular process in dealing with leaks. Now, systems are very, very important, and CAP, which stands for Certified Analytics Profession, or Professional Certification. So I just because if you say Certified Analytics Professional, that sounds like a sentence that's not complete in the context of the sentence. So we are just saying Certified Analytics Profession, but it actually means Certified Analytics Professional. So CAP made a system in approaching data analytics, and systems are very good for several reasons. Two reasons here. Two major reasons is, one, you actually are able to transfer skills and knowledge because of a system. That means it makes things repeatable. The other reason is that you can make corrections, or you can make changes, and you can actually track the corrections and the changes that you're making as well. This is very good when you're looking at optimization. Now, I did mention at the beginning of this slide, and it was not a title to just mislead you or get you to click or watch this, where it was said that if you've ever visited a doctor, you can grasp what happens as far as data analytics is concerned. At least it gives you the big picture. You might not necessarily understand the details, but you understand the big picture. And there's someone that said something. The title of this slide is that all truth is parallel, and it was Maurice Cerullo that said it. And that's because if you look at truth, and it's something that I found out after living in this world for some time, that if something is true, it tends to be true. If it's really, really true, or if it's truth, it tends to be the same or similar in irrespective of the industry. And that's true. You obviously have some things that are not true in several scenarios, but from this point of view, truth, what we call real truth, doesn't matter which industry you go to, you'll find the similarities and consistencies there. And so there's a link and there's a similarity between data analytics and medicine. And if you look at the certified analytics professional framework, there are 7 domains or 7 steps that you should go through to understand analytics. That would make you understand your role in analytics and would also help you be more of a professional in analytics. So we're going to be looking at the steps from both points of view, from the business point of view where you're dealing with data, and we'll be looking at it from the medical point of view as well. So phase 1, now ignore the names. You would see business problem framing and all of that. That will make sense to some people, it wouldn't make sense to some people, but I will explain what each phase is doing. And you've got each step there, you've got 7 domains there. The first one has to do with business problem framing, and all this is saying is from if you've done some business analysis, you hear things like gathering requirements. Now all of that are just much bigger terms. What's basically happening is if a patient goes to a medical doctor, the doctor says, what's the problem, or how can I help you? And the doctor keeps quiet. For the next few minutes, all you have is the patient talking about their problems, talking about their symptoms. Really, they don't talk about their problems. A lot of times they talk about their symptoms. They talk about their symptoms, their symptoms, their symptoms, their symptoms. But as far as the patient is concerned, they're actually calling it their problem. But what they're experiencing are symptoms. And what the doctor then does is the doctor takes in all of that information. That is step 1. Now, step 2 is the doctor presents that information back to the patient, or from a business point of view, you present this information back to the business and you say, this is how I understand what you've said. If you think about it, when someone tells the doctor, my head is paining me, my leg is paining me, my tongue is this, the doctor does not write all of that down on the paper. Head is paining him, tongue is paining him, the doctor doesn't write that. The doctor definitely writes something down on the paper, and based on what they write, it will still confirm everything, well, to an extent, everything that the patient has said. So phase 2 is saying, this is how I understand this. Now you can see this more or less like a technical document, whereby step 1 is the business case, the business requirements. Step 2 is rewriting this for a technical audience so that they are able to understand this, because this is the paper that the document that the doctor is going to present to the nurses and the staffs that will be working with them. After the doctor has confirmed this problem, you move to step 3, which is then data. In this particular point, the doctor is trying to see if there's any historical medical record. They are checking, they are confirming. If it doesn't exist, they are creating one. From a business point of view, you are saying, what data do you have? Let me see from this data if we can actually trace the source of this problem, and I want to know the different types of data that you have. And like you can see, they are very, very similar. Then that takes you into step 4, with all of this information that you've presented, step 4, the doctor is beginning to think of, okay, what are the different solutions we have, medical solutions that we have. That's what the doctor is thinking of, but they have several in their mind that they want to select from, and they will start narrowing down based on information that you give them. From a data analytics point of view, that's the same thing that you're doing. After you've gotten these first 3 informations, you are then saying, all right, how can I then what are the different options that I have, the different methods of solutions that I have, and which one do I think will be best to solve this problem that the client is having, that the business is having. And after you've done that based on information and you've narrowed it down, then you move to step 5. As a medical doctor, the medical doctor would then prescribe a medication, and they would also prescribe a dose. From a business point of view, you say this is the model that we are going to use because this model uses this particular method, and this method will be best in solving this problem that you have based on the symptoms that you have already given, and these are the parameters that would allow this model to work. So it's very, very similar, the medication and the dose. After that has been done, you then move to the next step, which is where there is now the administration of the medication. Now this could happen in 2 ways. The user could be could administer this medication to themselves if they are able. If they are not in a position to do that, by themselves, then the doctor will administer the medication to them. And from a business point of view, it's the same thing. If the business is able to take the solution that you've prescribed and they say, you know what, thank you, we can handle things from here, we don't need you anymore, all well and good, then the business is able to do that. But if the business says, oh, yes, you've given us the medication, we still need your help, we are not in a position whereby we are able to administer this ourselves, then you can obviously come in and you will then administer the medication to them. Obviously that comes at an extra cost. Now, after you've done this and you've administered the medication, what's the next thing that generally tends to happen is you want to start monitoring for signs of improvement, signs that things are getting better. And all you're really doing here is you're doing checkup. Now, phase 7 here is dealing with model lifecycle management, which is ensuring that the model that you've selected is still the best model, you're still using the best model, and the methodology you're using is still the best that has definitely answered the business problem from the onset. And you're checking all of that, and if there's any change that you need to make, you are on top of that. So that's really what this is in a nutshell. And like I said, you see, if you've ever gone to the doctor, it gives you that big picture of what happens as far as data analytics is concerned. Now, if you've gained any value from this, kindly let me know by leaving a comment, and even subscribe. Consider subscribing and or following me. Now, remember, you don't need to agree with everything that I've said. If that's the case, hey, also let me know your perspective. We don't have right hands and wrong hands, and as far as I've checked, even today, we still have right hands and left hands. And if you want to know who I am, the man behind the slide, I've had experience with data from birth. Before we get to that, my name actually is Sean. Now, if you know how to pronounce that, all well and good. But just because of the audience we are dealing with, I just go with Sean. Like I said, I've had experience with data from birth, and that I say that because when I was born, I suddenly started receiving new information through my ears, new information with my eyes, my mouth. I was just collecting a lot of information. Believe it or not, that has to do with handling data. But if you want to know, okay, what have you done professionally? Well, professionally, I've used data since 2009. From then till date gives us roughly about 15 years. And if you count that, you might notice a gap year. Within that gap year, I did my master's program and it was in modern communication technologies with business management. I generally tend to call that communications engineering with business management. Came out with a distinction. And if you want to know what industries I've had experience in, within the utilities sector, I've had experience in telecoms, within the energy sector, within the water industry as well. And all of that I did with through a consulting company, a large consulting company. Um, Also from with the consulting company, I also had experience within the government sector. That was within the justice sector. Now, outside the consulting company, I've had experience in e-commerce or with e-commerce, and that's using Amazon. I know a lot about Amazon, Etsy, well, majorly Amazon. So it goes in that order. Or Amazon, Etsy, and then Shopify, where the highest is Amazon. So remember, if you have any feedback, obviously leave me feedback and kindly and a comment as well. That would be nice. Whether you agree or you do not agree, that's absolutely fine. So thank you and look forward to the next series that will come out. Have a lovely day.